My neighbor stole my firewood for weeks while simultaneously fining me for having it. So I let her keep stealing. Because some of those logs? I'd made them myself, hollow, packed with black powder and stacked right in the middle of the pile. Welcome to the HOA files. I'm Tom Thompson, retired mechanical engineer, and this is the story of how one stolen log started a neighborhood revolution. Maple Ridge Estates looks like it was pulled straight from a real estate brochure. White picket fences, manicured lawns, neighbors who only smile when someone's watching. I moved here 8 years ago after my wife passed. I wanted peace, maybe a place with simple rules. I was wrong. Most neighbors were decent. The Millers brought pumpkin pie at Thanksgiving. Old Mr. Jenkins waved every morning. It was quiet, until Karen Whitmore arrived. Blonde, mid-50s, always dressed like she was heading to court even when walking her dog. Within a month, she'd made herself HOA president. Nobody remembered voting for her, but somehow she had the clipboard, the whistle, and the authority. Karen loved 3 things: power, attention, and pretending she was saving the neighborhood from itself. She showed up at my door her first month with a formal letter and a politician's smile. Mr. Thompson, your wood pile violates community aesthetic standards. It's visible from the street. I blinked. Karen, it's behind my shed. She tilted her head. From certain angles, it disrupts neighborhood symmetry. Symmetry. She was talking about firewood like it was modern art. I stacked it neater behind my fence and forgot about it. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. A week later, I noticed my wood pile looked smaller. I'm a detail guy, occupational habit. I counted the logs. About 20 pieces were missing. I assumed an honest mistake at first. Maybe the landscapers. But 2 nights later, more wood was gone. Then again. Always the same pattern, every other night, a dozen logs at a time. I asked around casually, nobody had seen anything. But no kid was hauling 40-pound oak logs through the dark. I decided to run a test. I carved small notches on the ends of certain logs, a craftsman's mark, and placed a motion sensor light near the shed. That night at 11:30 p.m. the light tripped. I rushed to the window and caught only a shadow slipping through my gate. Something shiny catching the moonlight. Too fast. Next morning, 4 marked logs were gone. And the grass near the gate was flattened by heels. High heels. There aren't many women in Maple Ridge who walk their yard at midnight in heels. In fact, there's only one I could think of. And she lived 2 doors down. I wasn't ready to accuse anyone. Not yet. But the same day, another HOA letter arrived. Your outdoor wood storage continues to violate Section 3 regarding fire hazards and visual appeal. I nearly choked on my coffee. She was fining me for the wood she was stealing. I drove by her house that afternoon and through her front window saw it, my logs, my cut pattern, stacked neatly beside her fireplace. The audacity was almost beautiful. So instead of slamming her door down, I smiled. And I started thinking like an engineer. I installed 2 outdoor cameras, night vision cloud backup, one above the tool shed, one in the gutter over the gate. Then I waited. 3rd night. 12:14 a.m. motion alert. I opened the app and there she was, Karen in her beige coat and heeled boots, walking into my yard like she owned it. Flashlight in hand, loading my logs into her SUV. Calm, efficient, smug. The mic barely caught her whisper. He won't miss it. It's for the community anyway. I watched it 3 times. Then I opened my workshop, pulled out my old sketch pad and got to work. I want to be clear, I wasn't building anything dangerous. I wanted something poetic. As a mechanical engineer, I see potential in every object, and I had some hollow logs from a previous project, some black powder left from 4th of July fireworks, and a lot of creative frustration. The plan: hollow out a few logs with my lathe, insert small charges of black powder, the kind people use for homemade fireworks, then plug the ends with bark so they looked solid. Brush them with ash to dull the color. Stack them right in the middle of the pile. Harmless, dramatic, educational. It took 2 days to get them perfect. I stacked all 3 masterpieces among the real wood and waited. Before the logs even had a chance to do their work, Karen called a community meeting. I usually avoided those, too many arguments about paint colors and fence heights. But this time I arrived early and took the front row. Karen walked in holding a coffee mug that said "Number 1 Boss Lady." She smiled like she'd already won. Let's address the ongoing fire hazard in Mr. Thompson's yard, she began. Despite repeated warnings, he continues to store dangerous amounts of wood in plain sight. The HOA will fine him $250 and mandate removal within 72 hours. I raised my hand. Karen, you said you documented my firewood recently. Within the last 48 hours? That's correct. Interesting. Because in those same 48 hours, half my firewood was stolen. The room went very quiet. Maybe you misplaced it, she said. I don't misplace 80 pounds of oak, Karen. I installed cameras after the second theft. Want to see the footage? The color drained from her face. That's an invasion of privacy. Cameras on my property facing my wood pile. Perfectly legal. I held up my phone. Would you like me to play it? She froze. Panic flickered behind her eyes. Then she puffed up and hissed, "You'll regret this," and stormed out. The room erupted. The tide was turning. And 3 nights later, Karen proved she still hadn't learned a thing, because she came back for more wood. I watched through my curtains as she loaded logs into her SUV again. Among them, 3 hollow masterpieces. I turned off the lights, leaned back in my chair and exhaled. The fuse was set. It was about 8:45 p.m. I was watching Mythbusters, fitting, when a dull boom echoed through the neighborhood. Then another louder. Then silence. Then screaming. I stepped onto my porch. A plume of gray smoke rose above the rooftops. The smell of burnt ash drifted through the air. Neighbors were already gathering. Karen stood in her driveway in a silk robe that looked like it had been rescued from a barbecue pit. Hair singed, face black with soot, shouting at a firefighter. It just exploded. I was burning logs and then, boom. The firefighter was visibly trying not to smile. Could be combustion buildup. Maybe something inside the wood caught fire too fast. Are you saying it's my fault? Could be a lot of things. Maybe you bought bad wood. Karen blinked. I didn't buy it, I sourced it locally. Everyone turned toward me. Sourced, I repeated. That's one way to put it. A fire inspector later confirmed traces of black powder in the fireplace remnants. Karen immediately declared I'd tried to kill her. I stayed calm, took a slow sip from my mug and said, "Bold accusation, especially since you just admitted on record the wood came from me." Officer Ramirez pulled up shortly after. A neighbor had called suspecting foul play. I handed him my phone with the video paused on a perfect frame. Karen, mid-theft, moonlit, caught. He watched it quietly. "Ma'am, is this you?" Her license plate was visible. Her face was clear. Her time was up. Ramirez issued an official warning, trespassing, theft. He turned to me quietly on his way out. "You handled that better than most. Just don't build any more science experiments." "No promises," I said. Karen wasn't done. She scheduled a formal HOA hearing, accusing me of sabotage, unauthorized surveillance and endangerment. The community clubhouse was packed. Word had spread. People who hadn't attended a meeting in years showed up just to watch. Karen laid out her case. Reckless behavior, malicious intent, public endangerment. Then she gave me the floor. I opened my folder. Camera footage, fire inspector's report, neighbor statements, and walked through it calmly. The video played on the clubhouse TV. Karen in her beige coat, loading logs into her SUV. Gasps filled the room. She tried calling it fake. I reminded her Officer Ramirez had verified it personally. She tried blaming the explosion on me. I reminded her that without stolen fuel, there's no fire. Basic physics. Mrs. Beasley, the HOA treasurer who Karen herself had appointed, finally spoke up. "Karen, the board reviewed the footage. We can't ignore what it shows." Karen spun on her. "You're siding with him? I made you treasurer." Beasley sighed. "You also fined me for having wind chimes." The room burst out laughing. Wilson, the vice president and a retired attorney, stood up slowly. According to HOA bylaws, the board can call an emergency vote if a sitting president acts against community interest. "Shall we?" Hands went up. First hesitantly, then confidently. Beasley's hand. The new members. Then nearly the entire audience. Motion carried. Karen looked around in disbelief. Then she grabbed her purse, muttered something about lawyers and walked out. When the door slammed, the entire clubhouse erupted in applause. Someone shouted, "Long live common sense." Life at Maple Ridge transformed almost overnight. The HOA letters stopped. The measuring tape patrols vanished. Under Wilson's leadership, rules became fair, fines became rare, and the neighborhood hosted its first summer barbecue, something Karen had banned for smoke visibility concerns. I was the honorary grill master. Karen tried to fight back. Handwritten signs in her yard. Angry posts in the neighborhood Facebook group. A formal complaint to the county office alleging corruption, discrimination, and conspiracy. She even started a new online persona. Karen for Community Safety. 2 people joined her page. One was her cousin from Arizona. Eventually she cracked. A for sale sign appeared in her yard. The day the moving truck arrived, half the neighborhood came out to walk their dogs or check the mail. Karen screamed at us all, "Ungrateful, small-minded, you'll regret this," climbed into her SUV and stopped one last time in front of my house. She rolled down her window. "You haven't seen the last of me." I raised my beer. "If I do, I'll install another camera." She floored it. And just like that, she was gone. The street erupted into spontaneous applause. Wilson walked over, grinning. "Tom, I think you're a local hero." "Hero's a strong word," I said. "I just lit the fuse." He laughed. "Literally." Months later, Karen came back one last time to collect some decorations the new owners had left in her old shed. I walked with her. She seemed smaller somehow, quieter. "You made me the joke of this town," she said softly. I looked her in the eye. "Karen, you did that to yourself." I just held up the mirror. Her shoulders dropped. "Maybe you're right." At the gate she paused. "They call me HOA Karen online now. Someone made a meme." "Internet's undefeated," I said. She didn't smile. Just said, "Take care, Tom," and walked away quietly for the first time. I stood there a long while. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt something more like closure. Because Karen wasn't just a villain, she was a warning. A warning of what happens when control becomes obsession, when pride blinds you to basic decency. The neighborhood that had lived under her rule for years finally breathed again. Kids played in the street. Neighbors talked. The fire pit I built became a weekly gathering spot. Families, couples, stories, laughter. And sometimes, when someone brings up the great Firewood explosion, we laugh until our sides hurt. Because here's the real lesson: respect goes both ways. Mind your own yard. Treat people like people, not HOA violations. And if you're going to steal someone's firewood while fining them for having it, make sure none of those logs were made by a mechanical engineer with a grudge and a lathe. That's the story of Karen Whitmore, the Firewood, and the most poetic backfire in Maple Ridge history. If you've lived under an HOA tyrant, you know exactly how this feels. And if you haven't, trust me, your day may come. This is the HOA Files, where the rules are ridiculous, the neighbors are unhinged, and karma always collects. If this story made you laugh, share it with someone who needs it. Drop a comment below with your worst HOA story. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because we've got more files, more Karens, and more poetic justice coming your way. See you in the next one.